day my parents told me to get out, my grandfather slipped a folded napkin into my jacket pocket and whispered, "Don't spend it all at once, boy." I didn't look at it until I was already standing on the sidewalk with 2 garbage bags of clothes and nowhere to go. When I finally opened it, I found a handwritten note that said, "Account number, your name, I've been waiting for you to need this." Below it was a 12-digit number and the name of a bank 3 blocks away. Grandpa Ned had been dead for 6 months. Let me back up. My name is Marcus Ellison, and I am 23 years old. For the first 22 years of my life, I shared a house with 2 parents who loved me in the way some people love a piece of furniture. They acknowledged I was there, were vaguely glad I served a function, and never really thought about me until they needed the space for something else. That something else was my sister, Brianna. Now, before you paint Brianna as the villain of this story, understand something. She isn't. She's 19, she's talented, she got a full scholarship to a performing arts college 2 states away, and she came home after her first semester because she said the pressure was suffocating her. She needed space to reconnect with her creativity. My parents, who had always treated Brianna like a second son around which our entire household orbited, immediately agreed that she needed the best environment possible to heal. That environment, they decided, was my bedroom. My bedroom was the largest in the house, aside from the master. I had spent 3 years quietly renovating it, installed better lighting at my own expense, built custom shelving along the south wall, put in blackout curtains, and bought a standing desk where I worked every night after my shifts. I worked remote quality assurance for a software company during the day and did freelance data analysis at night. I was quiet, I paid a modest rent to my parents every month, and I stayed out of everyone's way. None of that mattered. My mother knocked on my door on a Tuesday evening, stood in the doorway with her arms folded, and said the words I will never forget for as long as I live. "Marcus, we need you to find somewhere else to stay. Brianna needs this room. You're a grown man, you should be out in the streets anyway, building your life." Out in the streets. She said it so casually, like the streets were a reasonable destination, like she was suggesting I try a new restaurant. My father was sitting in the living room when I walked out, and he didn't look up from the television. He just said, "Give yourself a couple weeks to find a place." 2 weeks. To find an apartment in a city where the average 1-bedroom ran $1,400 a month. 2 weeks, after 23 years of being their son. I didn't cry, I didn't argue. Something went very quiet inside me, the way a room goes quiet after a loud noise, that ringing, hollow stillness. I went back to my room, packed what I could into 2 garbage bags, and walked out the front door. It was on the sidewalk, in the November cold, that I remembered the napkin. Grandpa Ned was my mother's father, and he was the single greatest human being I have ever known. He was 78 when he died, a retired electrician who smelled like coffee and sawdust, who kept hard candies in every pocket, and who had the unnerving habit of knowing things before they happened. He had been watching me my whole life in a way no one else in my family ever had. He came to my school science fairs. He drove 40 minutes to watch me receive a community scholarship when I was 17. He taught me to read electrical schematics when I was 12, just because knowledge is never wasted, son. And every single time my family overlooked me, every birthday that was slightly less celebrated, every achievement that got slightly less applause, every dinner conversation where I somehow ended up talking to myself, Grandpa Ned would catch my eye from across the room and give me one slow nod. "I see you. I see exactly what's happening. Hold on." When he died, he left behind a modest estate. My mother and her 2 siblings divided his belongings. I was not mentioned in any formal will, or so everyone believed. I went to the bank the next morning with the napkin and my ID, fully expecting to be laughed out of the building. Instead, a woman named Patricia with reading glasses on a beaded chain sat across from me, looked at the account number, typed quietly for a moment, and then looked up at me with an expression I can only describe as respectful. "Mr. Ellison," she said, "your grandfather opened this account in your name 11 years ago. He made consistent deposits for the duration of his life. with interest accrued over that time. She paused and turned the screen slightly toward me. The current balance is $247,000. I stared at the number. He also left a letter, she said, and slid an envelope across the desk. He specified it be given to you upon your first visit to this branch. The letter was 3 paragraphs long, written in Grandpa Ned's blocky, careful handwriting, the handwriting of a man who learned to write in an era when penmanship was considered a form of character. Marcus, it began, if you're reading this, something pushed you to find this account. I'm sorry for whatever that something was, because I know my daughter and I know how this family works, and I know that you have always been the one they take for granted. That is their great and permanent mistake. I started saving this money for you when you were 12 years old, the day you came to my house after school with a split lip because some kid pushed you down and your parents forgot to pick you up. You sat at my kitchen table and did your homework without saying a word about being hurt. I thought, this boy is going to need a foundation because no one is building one for him. Use this money to build. Don't spend it on anger. Don't spend it to prove anything to anyone. Spend it on something that becomes more valuable over time. I always believed that the best investment a man can make is in something permanent, something they cannot take back. I love you, boy. I always saw you. Ned. I folded the letter, put it in my jacket pocket next to where the napkin had been, sat very still for about 30 seconds. Then I asked Patricia if she could recommend a good real estate attorney. What happened next took 4 months, which I spent living in a furnished studio I rented week to week with some of the account funds while I worked and planned. I hired an attorney named David Ose, who was aggressively competent and deeply unsentimental, which was exactly what I needed. I got pre-approved for a mortgage using a portion of Grandpa Ned's money as a down payment. I attended 3 open houses. I made 2 offers. The second offer was accepted. On the house next door to my parents. I want to be precise about my reasons because people assume it was spite. It wasn't, or rather, it wasn't only spite. The house next door was a 3-bedroom craftsman that had been a rental property for 6 years. It was undervalued because the previous tenants had been hard on it. I knew the neighborhood. I knew the bones of houses like that because Grandpa Ned had taught me what to look for: good framing, solid foundation, copper wiring, roof age. I walked through it with David and an inspector, and I knew within 20 minutes that I was looking at a property worth significantly more than its asking price with the right repairs. I put in an offer. I got the house. I became a homeowner at 23 years old. I moved in on a Saturday in March. I rented a truck, carried my things in, and set up my standing desk in the largest bedroom. Through the window, I could see the side of my parents' house. I thought about Grandpa Ned sitting in his kitchen, watching me do homework with a split lip, deciding quietly that I deserved better. My mother saw me from the driveway an hour after I arrived. She stopped walking, stared. I waved. She came to the fence that separates the 2 properties, a low wooden fence that I now technically owned half of, an irony that was not lost on me, and she said, "What are you doing here?" "I bought the house," I said. "You what?" "I bought it. I'm your neighbor now." There was a very long silence, the kind of silence that has weight to it that you can almost feel settling on your shoulders. "Marcus," she said finally, "where did you get that kind of money?" "Dad," I said simply. She flinched, and I understood in that moment that she knew, had perhaps always sensed, that Grandpa Ned had seen what she had allowed to happen inside her own house and had made his own quiet judgment about it. I didn't say anything else. I went back inside and finished unpacking. It's been 7 months now. I've repaired the water damage in the second bathroom, refinished the hardwood floors in the hallway, and repainted the exterior. An appraiser recently told me the property is already worth $40,000 more than I paid for it. I leased the 3rd bedroom to a grad student named Tamaz, who is extremely clean and cooks spectacular food, and his rent covers 1/3 of my mortgage. My parents and I are not estranged, exactly. We speak. My mother brought over a casserole dish in April that I think was her version of an apology, and I accepted it in the spirit in which it was offered. Brianna calls me occasionally from my old bedroom to talk, and I always pick up, because she's my sister and she's trying to find herself, and I remember being 19 and lost even when I wasn't showing it. But every night when I sit at my standing desk, the same desk I built and carried out of that house in a garbage bag, and I look out the window at the neighborhood I grew up in, I feel something I never felt inside my parents' house. Permanent. Grandpa Ned told me to invest in something they couldn't take back. I thought about that for a long time before I understood what he really meant. He didn't just mean real estate. He meant the version of myself that knows his own worth, the self that doesn't wait for his family's recognition to feel like he belongs somewhere, that doesn't measure his value by the size of the applause at the dinner table. He meant build something so solid that no one can ask you to put it in garbage bags and carry it to the curb. I did, Grandpa. I did exactly that. And somewhere, I am completely certain, that old man with the hard candies in his pockets and the coffee and sawdust smell is sitting back and nodding, that slow, steady nod that always meant the same thing. I see you, boy. I always did.